On my 18th birthday, my parents threw a huge party, but not for me. My sister said she wanted to turn 18 again, and they let her take over the entire night. I walked out halfway and never returned. A year later, she couldn't bear seeing how far I'd come without them, and her jealous meltdown tore the family apart. The vibrant pink balloons, bobbing like mocking specters, the huge cake, a sugary monument to someone else's ego, and the blown-up photos of my older sister, Rebecca. Everywhere, they assaulted my senses the moment I stepped into our living room. It was June 15th, my 18th birthday, the day I'd been planning in my head since I was 15, a milestone Mom had promised would be special, that I deserved something special after a childhood spent watching Rebecca soak up attention like a sponge. Instead, my special day was completely erased, usurped. Surprise. Mom's voice rang out, but her eyes, they weren't on me. They were on Rebecca, who stood in the center of the room, preening in a birthday queen sash and a dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. My name is Ava, and that night, my world shattered. My own family threw a lavish party, but it wasn't for me. It was for my older sister, Rebecca, celebrating her 18th birthday again. I walked out that night, and honestly, I never truly looked back. But my sister's jealousy, fueled by my absence and my slow, quiet success, eventually tore our entire family apart. What's going on? My voice came out small, barely a whisper, lost in the sea of pink. Dad walked over, putting his hand on my shoulder, that familiar, diplomatic smile plastered on his face, the one he'd perfected over years of mediating between us. Well, Ava, he began, his voice placating, your sister had this wonderful idea. Since she felt like her 18th was rushed 2 years ago because of college applications, she thought it would be fun to have a do-over celebration. Isn't that creative? Creative? The word just bounced around my skull like a pinball, hitting every raw nerve. On my actual birthday, I looked at Rebecca. She had the decency to glance away for half a second before shrugging. Come on, Ava. Don't be selfish. You'll have other birthdays. Besides, I already invited everyone and planned everything. Mom and Dad agreed it made sense to combine celebrations. More efficient. She twirled in her dress. A sickening display and a smattering of polite claps came from the relatives I hadn't even noticed yet. Then, Aunt Melissa emerged from the kitchen, carrying this massive two-tiered cake covered in fondant roses. Elegant piping spelled out, Happy 18th again, Rebecca, in cursive. No mention of my name. No second cake waiting in the kitchen. Just this one custom-ordered monument to my sister's ego. We thought you'd be happy to share, Mom said, adjusting a pink balloon that had started to sag, her gaze meeting mine with that familiar, dismissive sweetness. Family is about compromise, sweetie. Compromise. That word had followed me through my entire childhood like a shadow, a constant, insidious justification for their neglect. Compromise. When Rebecca needed a bigger bedroom. Compromise. When she demanded beach vacations instead of the mountains I loved. Compromise. When my middle school graduation got cut short because she had a college orientation that same weekend. It was never a compromise. It was always about her. The guests started pouring in. Rebecca's college friends, her latest boyfriend Trevor, her sorority sisters, people I'd never seen before. They brought gifts wrapped in expensive paper, bottles of wine, even though I couldn't legally drink yet, and enough attention to feed my sister's validation addiction for months. My best friend, Harper, showed up around 7 p.m. She took one look at the spectacle, her eyes widening in disbelief, then found me hiding in the downstairs bathroom. She didn't say anything, just sat on the edge of the tub while I stared at my reflection, trying to remember what I'd looked like that morning before disappointment had rewritten my features, leaving them etched with pain. You okay? She finally asked, her voice soft. There's not a single blue decoration out there, I whispered, my voice thick with unshed tears. She knows blue is my color. She knows. My hands gripped the edge of the sink until my knuckles went white. Harper pulled out her phone. My brother's having people over at his apartment. We could go there. He said, You're welcome anytime. This is my house. My birthday. I know. Harper's voice carried the weight of 16 years of friendship, of shared history. But staying here is just going to hurt more. She was right, but I couldn't move yet. Some part of me, a small, stubborn, childish part, kept thinking that someone would notice. That dad would realize what was happening and shut it down. That mom would remember she had 2 daughters. That Rebecca would suddenly develop empathy and apologize. The bathroom door burst open. Rebecca stood there, mascara perfect, smile sharp as glass. Seriously, Ava, you're hiding during my party? Can you at least try to be supportive? God, you're so dramatic. Your party? The words came out flat, hollow. Today is October 12th. My birthday. Our party. Whatever. Stop being difficult. Trevor's cousin asked about you, and I told him you'd come say hi. He's single, kind of cute. Perfect for you since you never meet anyone. She left the door open when she walked away, and I could hear her laughing with someone about how I always got moody during celebrations. Harper looked at me with those eyes that had witnessed every slight, every forgotten recital, every time I'd been asked to step aside so Rebecca could shine. Let's go, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but firm, resolute. We walked out through the side door. Nobody noticed. The party continued without me, a blur of pink and laughter that wasn't for me. I sat in Harper's car as she drove us across town to her brother's place, and I felt something fundamental shift inside my chest. Not heartbreak, which I'd expected, but something colder, clearer. Determination. Harper's brother, Kyle, had graduated from state 2 years earlier and worked as a software developer. His apartment complex had a rooftop deck, and that's where I spent my 18th birthday, surrounded by people I barely knew, but who at least acknowledged my existence. Kyle's roommate produced a grocery store sheet cake from somewhere, and they sang "Happy Birthday" off-key while I blew out candles that had been meant for somebody's office party. To Ava, Kyle said, raising a beer. And to families who don't deserve her. I slept on Harper's couch that night. My phone exploded with messages around 11 p.m. Mom, asking where I'd gone. Dad saying I was being immature. Rebecca sending a paragraph about how I'd ruined her special night by leaving. Nothing from any of them contained an apology. Not one. This incident perfectly illustrates the scapegoat dynamic within dysfunctional families, where one member is consistently blamed or undervalued to maintain the family's distorted equilibrium. Ava's parents, by facilitating Rebecca's do-over birthday on Ava's actual birthday, engage in overt favoritism and emotional neglect. This public invalidation pushes Ava to a breaking point, forcing her to confront the reality of her family's conditional love and their chronic inability to acknowledge her, leading to a crucial act of self-preservation and boundary setting. The next morning, I went home to pack. Mom was in the kitchen, still cleaning up debris from the party. Pink streamers filled the trash can, a stark reminder of the previous night's humiliation. "We need to talk about last night," she started, her voice tight with disapproval. "You embarrassed us, Ava. We had guests, and you just disappeared. Do you know how that looked? Did anyone even notice I was gone?" I pulled my suitcase from the hall closet, its worn handle a familiar comfort. "Where do you think you're going? You can't just run away, because you didn't get your way. I'm going to start college a semester early. They have that spring enrollment program. I already got accepted." The lie came easily as shield. I hadn't actually applied yet, but in that moment, the plan formed fully in my head, solidifying into an unshakable resolve. I was going to tell you last night, but there wasn't really space for my news. Mom's face went through several expressions before landing on exasperation, a familiar mask. "You can't make decisions like this without discussing it with your father and me. College is expensive, and we haven't budgeted." "Rebecca's college fund," I interrupted, my voice steady. "The one Grandma set up before she died. There were 2, right? One for each of us. I'll use mine." Something flickered in Mom's eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or calculation. "That money is complicated. Your father and I borrowed from your fund when Rebecca needed extra for her sorority expenses and that semester abroad. We were going to pay it back. The floor dropped out from under me. You spent my college money on Rebecca's social life? It was an investment in her future. Networking matters, and those opportunities don't come cheap. You'll understand when you're older. Besides, we were planning to take out loans for you, so it all evens out. It didn't even out. Nothing about my life had ever evened out. I walked past her, up the stairs to my room, and started throwing clothes into my suitcase with a fierce, desperate energy. Mom followed, talking about responsibility and family loyalty and how I was overreacting. Dad appeared in the doorway, asking what all the noise was about. Your daughter is having a tantrum. Mom snapped. Your wife stole my college fund. I replied, my voice shaking with a quiet fury. The argument that followed involved a lot of raised voices and flimsy justifications. Rebecca joined halfway through, somehow making herself the victim by crying about how she didn't know they'd borrowed from my fund. And how could I blame her for Mom and Dad's financial decisions? She was so good at that, at finding the angle that made her look innocent while everyone else scrambled for moral high ground. I left that afternoon with 2 suitcases, my laptop, and the $600 I'd saved from my part-time job at the bookstore. Harper's mom, Patricia, a beacon of unexpected kindness, said I could stay with them for a few weeks while I figured things out. My parents didn't try very hard to stop me. The first week was pure survival mode. I picked up extra shifts at the bookstore, applied to every scholarship I could find, and started researching my options. My grades were strong, a 3.8 GPA, solid SAT scores, leadership positions in 2 clubs. I had options, but they all required money I didn't have. Patricia was everything my mother wasn't. She asked how I was feeling. She made space for me without making me feel like a burden. She helped me understand my financial aid options and connected me with a friend who worked in college admissions counseling. You're almost 19, Patricia said, sitting across from me at her kitchen table while I filled out college applications, the pages a blur of hope and anxiety. You can apply for financial aid, and with your academic record, you'll likely get scholarships. It won't be easy, but it's possible. My parents still claim me on their taxes. Won't that affect things? It will for now, but document everything. That you're not living at home, that they're not supporting you. Some schools have dependency override processes for situations like yours, and you can talk to financial aid offices about your circumstances. She was right. Over the next few months, I applied to 7 universities, all with strong financial aid programs. I wrote essays about resilience and independence, my pen flying across the page, pouring my heart onto paper. I gathered letters of recommendation from teachers who'd watched me excel despite a difficult home life. My parents called occasionally, Dad with his reasonable tone, suggesting we work through this as a family. Mom with her guilt trips about how I was breaking her heart. Rebecca sent texts that oscillated between apologetic and accusatory, never quite landing on genuine remorse. I didn't respond to most of them. What was there to say? Their actions had shown me exactly where I ranked in their priorities, and no amount of conversation would change that fundamental truth. By December, acceptance letters started arriving. State University offered me admission for the following fall with a partial scholarship. 2 other schools offered similar packages, but the best offer came from Riverside University, a full tuition scholarship based on academic merit, plus a housing grant that would cover most of my dorm costs. I accepted Riverside's offer in January. The school was 4 hours from home, far enough to feel like freedom, but close enough that the distance itself made a statement. I'd start in August, which gave me 8 months to save money and prepare. I spent those months working every shift I could get at the bookstore. Patricia let me stay rent-free, but I insisted on contributing to groceries, a small act of pride. I took online courses at the community college to get a head start on credits. I studied for the SAT again and raised my score by 60 points, which qualified me for an additional scholarship. In March, I applied for every scholarship I could find, small local ones, national competitions, essay contests. I wrote about resilience and self-determination until the words felt carved into my bones. By May, I'd secured enough funding to cover books, supplies, and incidental expenses for my first year. Summer passed in a blur of preparation. I bought dorm supplies from thrift stores, researched my professors, connected with my future roommates online. Harper helped me pack, her presence a comforting warmth, and Patricia threw me a small going-away party the week before I left. "You did this," Patricia said, hugging me goodbye, her voice thick with pride. "Nobody handed you this opportunity. You earned every bit of it." I moved into my dorm at Riverside in mid-August. The campus was beautiful, all red brick buildings and tree-lined paths, a new world unfurling before me. My roommate was a music major from Vermont who kept odd hours but was considerate about noise. Everything felt possible in a way it never had before. I threw myself into classes with a kind of fierce focus that comes from having something to prove. Psychology major with a minor in business administration. I joined the psychology club and volunteered at the campus peer counseling center. My professors noticed my work ethic, my quiet dedication, and by October, I'd been invited to join a research team studying family dynamics. Harper visited twice that fall. She brought news from home that I hadn't asked for, but appreciated anyway. Rebecca had dropped out of her sorority after some drama with her latest boyfriend. Mom had started a book club and spent most meetings complaining about how her youngest daughter had abandoned the family. Dad had gone quiet, which was his way of dealing with things he couldn't fix. "They asked about you," Harper said over coffee in the student union. "Your mom especially. I think she's starting to realize what she did. Starting to realize it's been 5 months." "I know. I'm just telling you what I see." Harper stirred sugar into her drink. "Your dad drove past the bookstore the other day. Just sat in his car for like 20 minutes, staring at the door. Did he come in?" "No." Part of me had hoped he would. Part of me was glad he hadn't. My first semester ended with a 3.9 GPA and Dean's List honors. I picked up a work-study position at the campus admissions office for the spring semester. The work was straightforward, answering phones, giving campus tours, filing applications, but it paid better than the bookstore and looked good on a resume. Spring semester brought more classes, more research opportunities, and more distance from the family I'd left behind. I made friends with people who didn't know my history, who saw me as just Ava, not the overlooked daughter or the dramatic one who walked away. That's when I met Andrew. He was doing research with the psychology department, a graduate student working on his thesis about family systems and emotional neglect. We met at a campus lecture series in March. Started talking and didn't stop for 3 hours. He had this way of listening that made you feel heard, not just tolerated. "So, you're basically estranged from your family over a birthday party?" He asked over dinner at the cheap Thai place off campus, a small smile playing on his lips. "Over 18 years of being second best and a birthday party that confirmed it," I corrected. "Fair distinction." He smiled, and something in my chest loosened, a long-held tension releasing. "You're handling it better than most people would." "How do you know I'm handling it well?" "Maybe I'm a disaster behind closed doors." "Are you?" I thought about it. The question was genuine, not rhetorical. "No," I finally said. "I'm angry, and I probably will be for a long time, but I'm also happier than I've been in years." "Is that weird?" "Not even a little bit," he said, reaching for my hand across the table. "Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to see your value." We started dating in April. Nothing dramatic or rushed, just easy comfort and someone who got it without needing extensive explanation. Andrew's own family lived in Oregon, and he understood what it meant to build a life separate from the people who raised you. Summer came, and I stayed on campus again. Most students went home, but I picked up extra work-study hours and took 2 online classes to get ahead on credits. Andrew was around too, working on his research, and we spent long evenings studying together in the library or exploring the town. By the end of summer, I'd completed enough credits to be on track for early graduation if I wanted it. I decided to aim for finishing in 3 years instead of 4. It would save money and get me into graduate school sooner. That's when Rebecca found me on social media. I kept my profiles private, but she created a fake account and sent a friend request that I accepted without looking closely. Within hours, she'd scrolled through over a year of my life. My Dean's List certificate, Photos with Andrew, pictures from a weekend trip to the coast, my apartment, the scholarship award announcement from the psychology department. Her message came through at 2 a.m. Must be nice to abandon your family and play pretend college student. Some of us have real responsibilities. I blocked her immediately, but the damage was done. She knew where I was and what I was doing. And knowing Rebecca, she wouldn't keep that information to herself. The first sign of trouble came a week later when Mom called from a number I didn't recognize. I made the mistake of answering. Ava, thank God.
We've been so worried about you.
Rebecca showed us your social media, and we had no idea you were doing so well. We want to talk to fix things. Please come home for Thanksgiving. We'll do it right this time. I promise. You want to fix things now that you've seen I'm successful without you? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. That's not fair. We've always wanted what's best for you. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. You can't just throw that away over hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. As if the past year and a half had been a minor disagreement over dinner plans. I don't think I'll be coming home for Thanksgiving, I said carefully. I have plans with that boyfriend. Rebecca found photos of Ava. You barely know this boy. What if he's taking advantage of you? You should be with family during the holidays. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up and immediately called Andrew, who talked me down from the anxiety spiral that followed. We made plans to spend Thanksgiving with his research advisor and a group of grad students who also weren't traveling home. It ended up being one of the best holidays I'd ever had. But Rebecca wasn't done. She started commenting on mutual friends' social media posts, crafting a narrative where I was the selfish daughter who'd abandoned my family over nothing. She told people I'd stolen money from our parents before leaving. She claimed I'd always been jealous of her and finally snapped when she tried to share my birthday celebration. The stories were absurd, but enough people didn't know the full truth that some believed her. I lost a few casual acquaintances from high school. Harper's defense of me on social media sparked a family-wide argument that ended with 3 of my cousins blocking me. She's spiraling, Harper told me over video chat. I ran into her at the grocery store, and she went on this 10-minute rant about how you think you're better than everyone now. It was honestly kind of scary. What did you say? That she needed therapy and maybe some self-awareness? Her boyfriend was with her. Looked like he wanted to disappear into the cereal aisle. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Rebecca had spent 2 years of college living the life she'd wanted, supported by our parents emotionally and financially. Now, she was flailing, and somehow that was my fault, too. December brought finals and snow, and a surprise package from Dad. Inside was a card with a check for $5,000 and a note that said, "For your college expenses. I'm sorry we failed you. I hope someday you'll let me explain." I stared at that check for 3 days before depositing it. The money helped, but it didn't fix anything. Apologies without changed behavior were just words, and Dad was still married to Mom, still enabling Rebecca's victim complex. Christmas came and went. I spent it with Andrew's advisor and her family, who treated me like I belonged there without asking for my complete history. We ate too much ham, played board games, and watched terrible holiday movies. It was perfect in its simplicity. New Year's Eve, I made a resolution. Stop waiting for my family to understand what they've done wrong. They either got it or they didn't, but either way, I was moving forward. This period of Ava's life highlights the complex psychological dance between seeking validation and establishing self-worth, particularly when dealing with a dysfunctional family. Her parents' and sisters' attempts to draw her back into the family drama after seeing her success are a form of reactive manipulation, where they exploit her past vulnerability to re-establish control. Ava's decision to maintain distance, despite their appeals, demonstrates a crucial step in individuation and healthy boundary setting, prioritizing her own well-being over the comfort of her family's established, toxic dynamics. Spring semester of my sophomore year brought an internship opportunity at a local youth counseling center. The work was emotionally heavy, but rewarding in ways I hadn't anticipated. I worked with teenagers from difficult home situations, and I saw myself in so many of them. The ones who'd been overlooked, who'd learned to make themselves small to avoid conflict, who were just starting to realize they deserved better. My supervisor, Dr. Rachel Morrison, became something of a mentor. She built her career on family systems therapy and had written extensively about scapegoat dynamics and sibling relationships. "You're good at this," she told me after I'd run a particularly difficult session with a 17-year-old whose parents compared her constantly to her older brother. "You have empathy that comes from experience. That's valuable. But make sure you're processing your own stuff, too. This work will eat you alive if you're not careful." I started seeing a therapist on campus. Dr. Lee was patient and didn't push, just created space for me to untangle 18 years of conditional love and parentification. Slowly, painstakingly, I started to separate what had been done to me from who I actually was. The anger didn't disappear, but it became something I could hold instead of something that held me. By March of my sophomore year, I'd made Dean's List again and gotten accepted into an accelerated program that would let me start graduate-level classes during my senior year. My life had purpose, shaped entirely on my own terms. That's when Rebecca showed up. She appeared on campus on a Tuesday afternoon, finding me outside the psychology building between classes. She'd cut her hair short and lost weight, and there were circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "We need to talk," she said, her voice strained, like we'd just seen each other yesterday instead of 17 months ago. "How did you find me?" asked around. "It's not that big of a campus." She shifted her weight, suddenly looking younger than 20, vulnerable. "Can we get coffee or something, please?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. We walked to the student union in silence and found a table in the back corner where the noise from other students created a buffer of privacy. "I'm failing out," Rebecca said once we sat down, her voice small. "2 semesters of probation, and they're kicking me out after the semester. Dad's furious. Mom won't stop crying. Everything's falling apart, and I don't know what to do." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you were right." She twisted her coffee cup between her hands, her gaze fixed on the steam. "About everything. About them treating you like you didn't matter. About me being selfish. About all of it. I've spent the last year watching you build this entire life without any of us. And it made me look at my own life, and I realized I don't actually have anything. No real friends, no purpose, no direction. Just parents who expected me to be perfect and a sister who was smart enough to leave." I wanted to feel satisfaction, some vindication that she finally got it. Instead, I just felt sad. "What do you want from me, Rebecca?" "I don't know. Advice? Forgiveness? A roadmap for how you did it." She laughed, but it came out bitter, hollow. "How did you just walk away and be okay?" "I wasn't okay," I told her honestly. "I was angry and scared and convinced I'd end up homeless or failing. But I was also determined not to let what you all did define the rest of my life." I paused, considering my next words carefully. And I had help. Real help from people who didn't need me to be anything other than myself. "I don't have that." "You could. But it would require you to actually change, not just feel bad about yourself for a while until Mom and Dad fix things like they always do." Rebecca flinched. "They can't fix this. Dad already told me he's not paying for another semester unless I prove I'm serious about school. But I don't even know what I want to study. I just picked communications because it sounded easy." We talked for another hour. I didn't absolve her or promise we'd rebuild our relationship, but I gave her the name of my therapist and told her about community college as a reset option. She left looking slightly less lost, but I knew better than to expect real change. People didn't usually transform just because they hit one rough patch.
I told Andrew about it that night.
We'd grown close enough that he understood my family dynamics without needing constant explanation. "Do you think she'll actually do anything?" he asked while we studied together in the library. "Probably not. Rebecca's great at the moment of realization, but terrible at follow-through. She'll go home. Mom will comfort her. Dad will find a way to blame the school or her professors or something. And she'll end up at some private college that costs twice as much because their admission standards are lower." Cynical. "Realistic," I countered, closing my textbook. "I spent 18 years watching this pattern. She creates chaos. They clean it up, and nothing fundamentally changes. I'm not getting pulled back into that. Good, he said firmly. You've built something real here. Don't let them take that. The summer after my sophomore year, I secured a research position with Dr. Morrison at the counseling center. The work involved collecting data on family therapy outcomes and helping prepare materials for papers she was writing on sibling dynamics. It was my first real experience with academic research, and I loved it. But Rebecca couldn't leave things alone. 2 weeks later, she was back. This time she brought Mom. They cornered me after my shift at the counseling center in late July. I walked out to my car and found them leaning against it, clearly having waited for a while based on Mom's impatient expression. We need to have a family meeting, Mom announced, as if she had any authority over my schedule. This arrangement has gone on long enough, and it's time to work through it like adults. I have dinner plans.
Cancel them.
Your family comes first, Ava. Or have you forgotten that entirely? Something in her tone triggered every defense mechanism I'd spent a year building. My family? You mean the people who spent my college fund on sorority dues and stole my 18th birthday? That family. We've apologized for that. Mom said, though I couldn't remember a single genuine apology. You need to learn forgiveness. Holding grudges is unhealthy. You know what else is unhealthy? Parents who pick favorites and then act shocked when the less favored child stops, subjecting herself to mistreatment. Rebecca stepped forward. Ava, I told Mom about our conversation, about how you said I could change. I'm trying, okay? I enrolled in community college for summer classes. I'm seeing a therapist. I'm doing exactly what you suggested. That's great, Rebecca. Genuinely. But that doesn't mean I have to welcome you all back into my life just because you're finally experiencing consequences. Your father is heartbroken, Mom said, switching tactics, her voice dripping with melodrama. He blames himself for everything. He's lost weight. Can't sleep. Is that what you want? To destroy your family because you didn't get enough attention at one birthday party. The sheer reductiveness of that statement hit me like cold water, a slap in the face. If Dad is heartbroken, he can call me himself. He has my number. But he won't because that would require him to actually take a stand instead of sending you two to guilt-trip me into compliance. We drove 3 hours to see you, Rebecca said, her voice rising. Doesn't that mean anything? It means you're desperate for me to fix something that you broke, and I won't do it. I'm not your emotional support system or your rehabilitation project. I pull my car keys from my bag. You need to move so I can leave. You've changed, Mom said, and it sounded like an accusation. This isn't the daughter I raised. You're right. The daughter you raised would have swallowed this down and apologized for making you drive 3 hours. She would have agreed to the family meeting and let you steamroll her boundaries. But that daughter doesn't exist anymore. You saw to that. I got in my car and drove away while they stood in the parking lot looking utterly shocked. My hands shook on the steering wheel, adrenaline flooding my system. But underneath the anxiety was something solid. Pride, maybe, or just the profound satisfaction of finally saying what needed to be said. Andrew met me for dinner later that night. He took one look at my face and knew. They found you again. Mom and Rebecca ambushed me after work, demanded a family meeting, said Dad's heartbroken. The usual manipulation. What did you say? Everything I should have said 2 years ago. I said, picking at my food. I told them no.
Clearly.
Finally. How do you feel? Terrified and liberated. I admitted, meeting his gaze, in equal measure. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That sounds about right. The fallout was immediate and predictable. Mom called Dad, who finally called me, sounding tired and defeated. He said he respected my boundaries, but hoped I'd reconsider eventually. He said he loved me and was proud of what I'd accomplished. He said a lot of things that might have mattered more if they'd come 17 months earlier. Rebecca sent a series of texts that devolved from apologetic to angry to desperate over the course of 3 days. When I didn't respond, she posted on social media about how some people would rather throw away their family than admit they overreacted. The post got a lot of engagement from relatives who didn't know the full story. Harper screenshot it and sent it to me with a message. She's making herself look unhinged. Everyone who matters knows the truth. The people who mattered. That phrase stuck with me. I'd spent so much of my life trying to matter to people who couldn't see my value. Now I was surrounded by people who did. Andrew, Harper, Patricia, Dr. Morrison, my friends from school, my colleagues at the counseling center. These were the people who showed up without conditions, who celebrated my successes without making them about themselves. Why was I still letting my biological family take up so much mental real estate? I made a decision then, not to forgive them or write them off entirely, but to simply stop waiting. Stop waiting for the apology that would make everything okay. Stop waiting for them to understand what they'd done. Stop waiting for Rebecca to genuinely change, or for Mom to admit she'd been wrong, or for Dad to actually stand up to his wife and eldest daughter. I was done waiting. Finals came and went. I aced everything, finished my sophomore year with a 3.9 GPA, and continued my summer research position with Dr. Morrison. The work was challenging and sometimes heartbreaking, but it confirmed what I'd suspected. I was meant to do this, to help people untangle the knots their families had tied them in. July brought my 19th birthday. Andrew planned a small gathering with our close friends. Nothing elaborate, just dinner, a homemade cake, and people who wanted to be there. Harper drove up for the weekend. We stayed up late talking about everything and nothing, and I felt grateful in a way that had nothing to do with what I'd survived and everything to do with what I'd built. Nobody from my biological family reached out. Part of me had wondered if they would, if they'd remember this time. The silence was answer enough. August brought news through Harper that Rebecca had, in fact, started community college, but was already struggling with attendance. Mom had joined some kind of support group for parents of estranged children, where apparently she was learning all the wrong lessons about how to respect boundaries. Dad had started therapy, which was probably the most hopeful piece of information. He asked about you, Harper said during one of our phone calls. Asked if you were happy. I told him you were thriving. How did he respond? He smiled, but it was sad. Then he said, good. That's all I wanted for her. I didn't know what to do with that information, so I filed it away with all the other complicated feelings I had about my father. He'd failed me when it mattered, but he'd also been the one to send that check. He'd been weak when I needed him to be strong, but he'd never been cruel the way Mom could be, or oblivious the way Rebecca was. Maybe someday I'd be ready to have a conversation with him, but not yet. My junior year started with continued work at the counseling center and an invitation to contribute research assistance to Dr. Morrison's paper on sibling dynamics and family therapy. The paper would eventually be submitted to a psychology journal, not with my name as co-author since I was still an undergraduate, but with an acknowledgement of my research contribution. It was still incredibly meaningful, a first step toward the academic career I wanted. This is huge, Andrew said when I told him. Most undergrads don't even get acknowledged in published research. Dr. Morrison did most of the work. Stop diminishing your accomplishments. You earned this recognition. He was right. I had a terrible habit of downplaying my successes. A leftover coping mechanism from years of watching Rebecca's achievements get celebrated while mine got polite acknowledgement. Unlearning that pattern was harder than I'd expected. The semester progressed smoothly. I was taking the GRE in December to prepare for graduate school applications, spending my evenings with practice tests and vocabulary flashcards. My target schools all had strong clinical psychology programs, and I was building the kind of application that would make me competitive. Then, in early October of my junior year, everything exploded. Rebecca had apparently been building up to some kind of breakdown for months. According to Harper, she dropped out of community college after 2 weeks, broken up with her boyfriend, and moved back home where she spent most of her time in bed scrolling through my social media from fake accounts. Then she found out about the research acknowledgement. Dr. Morrison had posted about the upcoming paper on the counseling center's website, mentioning the research team including undergraduate research assistants. My name was listed along with 2 other students. Standard academic practice. Nothing personal. Rebecca saw it as a personal attack. The email she sent to the counseling center's general inbox was unhinged. She accused me of exploiting our family trauma for professional gain, claimed I misrepresented our childhood to make myself look like a victim, and demanded the center fire me for ethical violations. She copied Mom and several relatives on the email. Dr. Morrison called me into her office the day after the email arrived. My stomach dropped when I saw her expression. "We need to talk about this," she said, turning her computer screen so I could see the email. "I'm not concerned about the accusations because they're clearly baseless, but I am concerned about your safety. This reads like someone who is escalating." I read the email, each sentence worse than the last. Rebecca detailed every perceived slight from our childhood, painted herself as the real victim of a jealous younger sister, and threatened to go to the university administration if the center didn't take action against Ava's manipulative behavior. "I'm so sorry," I said, feeling a knot of dread in my stomach. "This is my family drama affecting your workplace. I understand if you need to remove me from the research acknowledgement." "Absolutely not," Dr. Morrison said, her voice firm. "Your work is excellent, and this email only confirms what we study, that people who benefit from dysfunctional family dynamics get very threatened when the scapegoat finds success." She closed her laptop. "But we do need to document this in case she continues to escalate. Have you considered a restraining order? For an email? For a pattern of harassment that's been going on for over 2 years now, according to what you've told me in supervision?" She corrected, her gaze steady. "The social media stalking, showing up on campus uninvited multiple times. And now this. It's escalating, Ava. I've seen this before." She was right. But the thought of getting a restraining order against my own sister felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. I told Dr. Morrison I'd think about it. That night, Mom called. Not from a blocked number this time, just a regular cell phone, like she'd forgotten I'd stopped answering her calls. I picked up, without thinking. "What have you done?" she cried, her voice rising in hysteria, which she always did when she wanted to manipulate a situation. "Rebecca showed me this research paper you're writing about our family. How could you exploit us like this? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I'm contributing to a research paper on sibling dynamics and family therapy," I explained, trying to keep my voice even, rational. "It doesn't mention our family by name. It doesn't include any identifying details. It's academic work, Mom. Everyone will know it's about us. You're making us look like terrible parents, airing our dirty laundry for your career after everything we've sacrificed for you." "What exactly did you sacrifice for me?" I asked, my patience finally snapping, years of resentment boiling over. "Rebecca's leftover attention? My college fund? My 18th birthday? We made mistakes, but we were doing our best. You're punishing us because we're not perfect. Do you know what it's like to have people ask me why my daughter won't speak to me? To have to explain that you just walked away from your family? How do you explain it, Mom? Do you tell them what actually happened, or do you let them assume I'm just ungrateful?" Silence on the other end of the line. Then she sighed, a long, martyred sound. "You are always difficult, Ava. Always so sensitive, taking everything personally." Rebecca adapted. "But you insisted on making everything about you." Something in me broke clean through. Not my heart, which had already cracked enough times to develop scar tissue. Something deeper. The last remaining thread of hope that she'd ever understand, that she'd ever truly see me. "Don't call me again," I said quietly, my voice surprisingly steady. "Don't show up on campus. Don't send relatives to guilt trip me. I'm done, Mom. Completely done. You can't just abandon your family. Watch me." I hung up and immediately blocked her number. Then I blocked Dad's, Rebecca's, and 3 aunts who'd been sending me incessant messages about being the bigger person. Andrew found me sitting in my apartment an hour later, not crying, just staring at the wall, a profound emptiness in my chest. "What happened?" I told him about the call, about Dr. Morrison's suggestion, about feeling like I was drowning in other people's expectations of what family was supposed to mean. "Do you want to file for a restraining order?" he asked gently. "I want them to just leave me alone," I said, my voice cracking. "To let me build my life without constantly trying to drag me back into their dysfunction." I looked up at him, my eyes pleading. Is that too much to ask? No, he said, his eyes unwavering. It's the bare minimum you deserve. We filed for a restraining order the next morning. The process was exactly as awful as I'd expected. I had to detail every incident of harassment, provide screenshots of Rebecca's emails and social media posts, explain to a judge why my own sister felt dangerous. The judge granted a temporary order and scheduled a hearing for 2 weeks out. Rebecca would be notified and given a chance to respond. I knew she'd have a meltdown. I didn't care anymore. The meltdown came via Dad, who called from a work number I hadn't blocked. I answered, thinking it might be about a scholarship application. Ava, please. You need to drop this restraining order. Do you understand what this is doing to your sister? She's barely functioning. Your mother is beside herself. Dad. I interrupted, my voice sharp. Rebecca sent an unhinged email to my workplace trying to get me fired. She's been stalking my social media for over 2 years. She showed up on campus multiple times after I asked her not to. What am I supposed to do? Just accept that harassment, because she's family? She's not well, Ava. She needs help, not legal action. Can't you see how much she's struggling? I've been struggling since I was a kid, and none of you noticed because I didn't make it everyone else's problem. Rebecca's mental health isn't my responsibility, especially when she's actively trying to harm me. You're tearing this family apart. The family was already broken, Dad, I said, taking a shaky breath. I'm just refusing to pretend otherwise anymore. I love you, but I can't sacrifice my safety and peace of mind for people who've never prioritized mine. If Rebecca needs help, get her help. But leave me out of it. I hung up before he could respond and added his work. Finally doing something that required actual courage. Rebecca violated the restraining order in April of my senior year. She created yet another fake social media account and sent me a long message about how I'd ruined her life, destroyed our family, and turned everyone against her. She seemed to have zero awareness that she'd done this to herself. I reported the violation to the police. Rebecca got a formal warning and a mandate to attend counseling. Mom apparently blamed me for that, too. According to relatives who still tried to play mediator, I graduated in May, 3 years after walking away from my 18th birthday party. I completed my degree in 3 years instead of 4 through summer courses and overloaded semesters. I'd been accepted into 3 graduate psychology programs, and I chose the one that offered the best funding package and clinical training opportunities. My undergraduate GPA was 3.87. Summa cum laude. Dr. Morrison had offered me a paid position as a research coordinator at the counseling center for the summer before grad school started. I was 21 years old with a clear career path, a healthy relationship, friends who felt like chosen family, and a future that belonged entirely to me. The graduation ceremony was bittersweet. Harper and her family came. Andrew and his parents flew in. Dr. Morrison was there. Patricia brought a bouquet of blue flowers and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. My biological family wasn't there. I'd sent Dad an invitation, but heard nothing back. Later, Harper told me he'd wanted to come, but Mom had threatened to make a scene if any of them attended. He'd chosen to avoid conflict instead of supporting his daughter. It stung, but not as much as it would have 2 years earlier. I'd learned to find celebration in the people who showed up instead of mourning the ones who didn't. At the graduation party Andrew threw for me, Patricia gave a toast that made me cry. To Ava, who had the courage to walk away from people who couldn't see her value, and the strength to build a life that reflects who she really is. We're all so proud of you. The guests raised their glasses, and I looked around at these people who had chosen to be in my life, who'd supported me without conditions, who'd celebrated my success, without trying to diminish it. This was family, not by blood, but by choice, by showing up, by seeing me. Later that night, after everyone had left, and Andrew had fallen asleep, I sat on our apartment balcony looking at the stars and thought about that pink balloon from 3 years ago. How something so small had been the catalyst for everything that followed. If I could go back and tell 18-year-old me what was coming, the pain and loneliness and doubt, but also the freedom and growth and joy, would I? Would I warn her about how hard it would be, or just tell her it would be worth it? I decided I'd tell her what Patricia had said. You're going to find your people, the ones who see you. Hold on for that. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your graduation. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm proud of you. Love, Dad. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling the familiar tug of wanting to respond, to rebuild something with the one parent who seemed capable of growth. But I wasn't ready yet. Maybe someday, but not today. I deleted the message and went back inside where Andrew was still sleeping and our apartment was full of the life we'd built together. Where tomorrow would bring graduate school orientation and new challenges and opportunities I'd earned entirely on my own. The girl who'd walked out of that pink balloon party was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who refused to accept crumbs when she deserved the whole cake. And yeah, sometimes I still got angry thinking about what they'd taken from me. But more often I felt grateful for what I'd taken back. My life, my future, my right to be seen and valued and celebrated. That was worth more than any birthday party could ever be. What is the ultimate measure of success for someone who has endured profound familial neglect and conditional love? The external recognition of achievements, or the internal peace and self-worth found in building a chosen family and authentic life?